Zoom had suddenly become a central part of the pandemic experience for millions around the world. But this unexpected boom resulted in a number of outages, forcing Zoom to upgrade its facilities in real time to try and keep up with the unexpected demand. This was incredibly stressful for Eric. Millions of new people were suddenly wanting to use his product, but they couldn't because of the outages. And sadly for Eric, the issues for Zoom were only just beginning. They soon ran into a problem with unexpected participants joining meetings and showing inappropriate images or making inappropriate comments. This became known as Zoom bombing, and it was a particularly big problem given how many schools were now using the software. There were cases of people hacking into meetings and shouting racial slurs, showing graphic material to school classes, and even disrupting AA meetings and trying to trigger and expose recovering addicts. Not just that, but once the software became widely used, Zoom was accused of having a number of major security issues, from claiming their app had end-to-end encryption when it didn't, to issues in the app's coding which left room for virus attacks and access to user locations. As a result, the New York State Attorney General began an investigation into the company, which ultimately forced them to pay out $86 million in a settlement. This was a massive blow to both Eric and Zoom's reputation. It even led to some companies and institutions banning the use of Zoom entirely, including NASA, Google, and even the Canadian government. During this time when major security problems were arising, the Zoom team became overwhelmed. Eric constantly found himself apologizing to the public and swearing to do better, but the constant negative articles about his company hit him hard, especially as his main goal with Zoom had always been to make people happy. Although his family were locked down in his house with him, he felt more distant from them than ever. He frequently vanished into his office, working late into the night. But Eric didn't have a choice. More users and more scrutiny meant more problems that needed to be fixed, or else everything he'd built could be destroyed. So he and his engineers focused on making Zoom functional for its new mainstream audience. They forced passwords onto every Zoom meeting by default and rebuilt their entire security process, purchasing the company Keybase to take advantage of their existing encryption software. But just as one problem was solved, another would seem to appear. There was one serious case of censorship where one of Zoom's executives in China worked with the Chinese government to ban and even expose the identities of participants in meetings who were commemorating the Tiananmen Square massacre. This led to the US Department of Justice charging the executive for a number of crimes, and Eric firing him as soon as he realized what he'd done. But it didn't matter that the employee was acting alone, or that Zoom really was an American company. The association between Zoom, Eric, and the Chinese government had been made. This caused some people to think Zoom shared all of its user data with the Chinese government, so Eric himself made sure to address this and ensure strict geofencing procedures were in place so no data was routed through China. But despite the headlines about security, Zoom continued to grow at an insane rate through the pandemic. Their revenue increased from $330 million in 2019 to over $4 billion in 2022. But as of right now, despite looking to earn more revenue than ever, Zoom is starting to see a decline in its users and customers. Part of this is likely down to Google Meet, which has recently skyrocketed to become Zoom's #1 competitor. Offering free calls for over 40 minutes, Google Meet has been slowly stealing away Zoom's market share. Amazon is also launching their own competitor called Chime, so Zoom's place in the market is by no means secure. In fact, Zoom has had to lay off a significant portion of its workforce, with Eric even cutting his own salary by 98%. To try and keep up company morale, Zoom has recently asked its employees to return to the office. Despite Zoom playing a significant role in the increase of remote working, Eric has come out to say that he thinks employees interacting in person is much better for their happiness. Eric also still has a lot of aspirations of growth, intending to branch out into new areas and new tech. They even recently acquired an AI language translation company. Eric wants a future where anyone on any device anywhere in the world will be able to use Zoom to instantly talk and understand each other in any language. Although this did cause some initial controversy, as articles appeared saying that Zoom can use your private calls and messages to train its AI systems thanks to new terms and conditions. Zoom denied this and admitted the terms had been worded badly, but given the previous security and privacy concerns, it wasn't a great look for the company. But whether Zoom ultimately maintains its position as market leader or not, if Eric continues to prioritize customer and employee happiness, he'll be achieving exactly what he set out to do. Eric came up with the idea of Zoom as a teenager who was unable to see the love of his life. By the time he'd created Zoom, he no longer had that problem, but millions of others around the world did. And thanks to Eric, they actually were able to see each other. Eric's goal was to create something that made people happy, and by providing a way for millions to interact with each other when the world felt particularly dark and uncertain, there's no doubt that he achieved that. So now you know how Zoom beat Skype, it's time to find out how Facebook beat MySpace. And the answer is almost certainly not what you're expecting. Just click this thumbnail now, and I'll see you there. Cheers.